Hi, my name is Lydia Kern, and right now we're in my art studio in Burlington, Vermont. I'm really happy you're here. I mostly make installations, sculptures, and prints. I use found materials that I find in places like the dump, junkyards, compost piles, to make my sculptures. I really love a good free pile. I have a ritualistic relationship with materials. In my process, I use them to create symbols that help acknowledge the tensions in life between disparate realities and feelings that are actually all in the same place. I started making work about 5 years ago after the experience of losing one of my younger sisters. My work came from the seed of that experience, but has also grown out from there. I come up with most of my ideas when I'm walking or in the car or roller skating, which is something I really love to do on the bike path. And yeah, this is one of my favorite quotes. It's from a letter that Sol LeWitt wrote to Eva Hesse, who's one of my favorite artists. He said, "You're not responsible for the world, you're only responsible for your work, so do it." I'll start off showing you some of my past work to kind of give a context of where I'm at now. This piece right here is called Fleet. It's made out of animal and cow vertebrae that were gifted to me from a friend. And this is a video of pink sunset light coming through my studio window and creating these shadows of the vertebrae on the wall. I then recorded the shadow shapes to create this screen print. And I kind of think about prints as eulogies of sculptures. This is part of a ritualistic land-based piece that centers on the act of unearthing a dairy cow from a compost pile at Bread and Butter Farm. A friend of mine and I conducted a sort of DIY archaeological dig. We dug a 6-foot hole, removed the bones, and then I washed them in a river, and I laid them out to dry on my friend's land all summer for them to get bleached by the sun. I think about this as a physical meditation on uncovering and sort of accepting decomposition for what it is, while simultaneously putting it in a new context. I'm interested in how the repetitive act of digging the hole and the repetitive motion of washing the bones changes the material. My friend Kale took some great footage of me doing the whole process, and I picture this film, found sounds, and the bones to be part of the final piece. Called Passage. It's made out of embroidery thread and screen doors. It's probably one of my favorite things I've made. I made it based off of this print. So in this case, the print came first. And I printed this out large, and I taped paper onto the screen doors and sewed through the paper and removed it when I was done. I like that the screen doors are held together by the tension of the thread itself, and I'm just interested in using crafts like embroidery in alternative ways. I think it's really fun to experiment with different sorts of lighting on the pieces themselves and see what sort of shapes or interactions emerge. Maybe the shapes could be prints, maybe part of film. I'm not sure yet. So recently in my work, I've been really excited about quilts and quilting. I love that they're made of so many disparate parts coming together. In my research, I've been learning about how quilts have traditionally been used as community fundraisers, especially in rural communities. And you also see them a lot on the sides of barns in Vermont, which I like a lot. One of my favorite quilt stories that I found pertains to the Raja quilt right here, which is at the National Gallery in Australia. This quilt was made by 108 female prisoners on a boat while they were being deported from England to Tasmania. And before the prisoner ship left, Quaker abolitionists gifted the women materials in order to calm them. And I find this medium calming, the repetitive motion of making. This piece right here is called Hard-Won Comfort. It's made out of digital prints on transparency, and it's sewn together with simulated sinew. The stitches themselves are the same sort of sutures that doctors use to sew up wounds. All the photographs are photographs I took during the first 2 weeks after losing my sister. They're all images and memories that sort of live inside my body, so it's like an X-ray of experiences and memory. I've been thinking about the metaphors of heirlooms and pattern making, and thinking about how sometimes you have to do the emotional labor of cutting up your own emotional psychological fabric to create new patterns that are more comforting and nurturing ones that you'd want to pass down. And I think it's really interesting that, like quilting as an art form, that sort of emotional labor and self-healing work is undervalued in society. And I just think about how that work is really slow. It's stitch by stitch, but I'm interested in how that sort of slow, monotonous liberation can bring about change and what that process is like. Yeah, and one thing that was special about this project is that my mom asked to see the photographs that I had taken years ago before I cut them up, and then she helped me tie them back together. Her and her friend helped me with the process of making that, so that was really meaningful. Recently, my friend Caitlin gifted me some x-rays of her own body, and I'm interested in continuing to create quilts like this with photographs and x-rays, and ones that include pictures of my own body as well. But I've also been really excited about learning the traditional form of quilting. My friend Kat McVeigh, she's Kitty Badhams on Instagram. If you want to take a quilt class or buy one of her quilts, she taught a workshop, and I got to make this quilt in that workshop, which was so fun. It started out as a screen print that I made at Iskra, and so I used that design to make this one. I've also been experimenting with weaving, which has been really great. All of these traditional forms of making have been really helpful during this anxiety-inducing time that we're in, and as I've been making them, I've been thinking about collaborating with life on life's terms, and also how I feel like artists have always helped society embrace the human experience more fully and embrace it for what it is, while simultaneously imagining something different. So I hope everyone's doing well out there, and thank you so much for watching and listening to me about my work. You can follow me on Instagram, and if you need some art, well, you're spending so much time at home these days, I have some of these prints for sale. Yeah, Thanks so much, and thanks to the BCA for organizing this. Be well, everybody.